Good evening. We continue to be with the pictures that are coming to us out of the White House this evening. Evening for us, morning for the US, about 10:30 a.m. in the morning. It's looking like it's going to be a packed day for the Prime Minister. It starts with what you've just seen, the White House arrival ceremony with much pomp and pageantry, brightening up proceedings there. And you had a huge diaspora presence as well, about 7,000 people, Indian people, people of Indian origin who live in the United States, all showing up there at the White House lawns to listen to the Prime Minister speak. Now, as I said, the day will be a fairly long one as we see these big crowds that will probably now disperse, given that the Prime Minister has spoken, given that the US President has spoken as well. Right after this, there are bilaterals that will happen between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Biden. They'll be followed by a press statement and a mini press conference. I say mini because only two questions will be taken, one from the US media and the other from the Indian media. That should be interesting. And John Kirby is already saying that this is a big deal. Then, of course, the Prime Minister will proceed to the US Capitol to address a joint session of the Congress. In attendance will be, again, congressmen, senators, and several hundred Indian Americans in the visitors' gallery. So a big Indian presence, a big Desi presence when the Prime Minister makes that address as well. Now, Prime Minister Modi, who addressed the US Congress in 2016, will become only the third world leader to address such a meeting twice. In fact, he mentioned that in the address that he's just given on the lawns of the White House. The day will culminate with a state dinner at the White House. Given that the Prime Minister is vegetarian, the menu is a specially curated vegetarian one. Much has been said about it, so I won't say anything more. So that's what day 3 of Prime Minister Modi's first state visit to the US is looking like. A bit personal, a bit political, and of course, lots of business. Some important and interesting things have already happened. The White House has announced that ISRO and NASA will be signing what is being called the Artemis Accords. Together, the two countries will be launching a mission to the International Space Station next year. That's 2024, election year here in India. Also a done deal, finally, is the drone deal. India will buy 30 Predator drones from the US at a cost of $3 billion. It has been roadblocked for multiple reasons for some time now. One of the reasons being that the US sells these armed drones only to allies and NATO countries. So this again will be one of the highlights of the visit, given the security challenges that India currently faces vis-a-vis China. In fact, the Prime Minister, before going into the White House, has said that there will be bilaterals. And once we come out of these bilaterals, there will be very important and big deals that will be signed. Now, another big deal that has already been announced is the one between GE and HAL to make jet engines for the Indian Air Force. Again, a big deal. Then there is the big announcement on the $2.75 billion semiconductor facility that will be coming up in Gujarat with the help of American company Micron Technology. Both countries are also expanding their diplomatic presence. There will be new US consulates in Aurangabad and Bengaluru and an Indian consulate in Seattle. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you just see the list of agreements that I've just read to you, and this is not the entire list, let me just tell you that, it's across several critical sectors that will take the India-US relationship to a whole new level. And it comes at a very unique time in history. Europe is seeing its bloodiest conflict since World War II, and the China headache is a common one for both the US and India. So the visit is as much about India reaching out to the US as the US reaching out to India. Mr. Biden has hosted only 2 state visits before this, one for the French president and the other for the South Korean. The third is for Prime Minister Modi, something that signifies the deepening ties between the two countries. Let me get a quick word in from our guest this evening, but before I do that, apart from several strategic defense and technological deals, I just want to talk about this a bit. There is this historic agreement that has been inked today with India joining the Artemis Accords. Now, under the banner of the Artemis Accord, India and America's space agencies, which is ISRO and NASA, will be embarking on a joint space mission to the International Space Station in 2024. The Artemis Accord is a coalition of like-minded countries that are committed to civil space exploration. The US leads the Artemis Accords, which is a set of principles, guidelines, and best practices that focuses on safe civil space exploration. So that's something that I found extremely interesting, apart from the fact that the drone deal is finally a done deal. My guest this evening, Jeremy Gray, is a state representative from Alabama. He's a Democrat. Derek Grossman is a senior defense analyst at the RAND Corporation. Thank you very much for your time here. And Pathikrit Payne is a geopolitical analyst. He's joining us on the broadcast as well. Let me quickly get to Jeremy first. Jeremy, thank you very much for your time, first of all. And apologies for keeping all of you waiting. The leaders were speaking. The Prime Minister of India has just spoken. The President of the United States has just spoken. We thought it fit to first go to them and then come to you. But Jeremy, what do you make of what the two leaders have said this morning?
First, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I think when you talk about the bilateral relations, it's both strategic and global partnership. So, this fostering of stability really helps the Indo-Pacific region and stabilizes, the well-being of both countries. And when you talk about what India is doing as far as their growth economically, and you think about their $3.5 trillion and their GDP, is only smart that these two nations will come together and really develop great technology and innovation in health and education. So all those things that we, from a bilateral standpoint, that we can mutually agree on and bridge that gap, I think that's what you're seeing today. And I think it's going to make both of our nations more powerful.
Gurjeet Singh, you're a former ambassador. We've just heard, as I said, from the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United States. What is clear to me is that India and America are framing this relationship to respond to the challenges of the 21st century. And one of the biggest challenges, or at least one of the biggest common challenges, of course, is China. We all understand that. But from what I've seen in the last 48 hours, the relationship seems to be much beyond that. It seems the way the relationship is being framed is not just to counter the China challenge, but it seems to me much beyond that.
I think you got that right, Ms. Dhoundial. I don't think this visit is about China. This visit is about the next generation of Indian and American coming together, as Prime Minister said, for the good of this world. I think that is the main aim. And as two democracies with common values, perhaps not the same worldview, we are yet trying to do things together because we are at different levels of development. So we need American technology, we need American investment, we need more trade, but there's no trade in this visit. At the same time, when India orders so many Boeing aircraft, they are going to create a million jobs across 44 states of the United States. So I think there is a great sense of complementarity and trying to do things together. I don't think they're trying to do everything together, but they are doing many things together for the future. The Artemis, you certainly said, is a good thing. But do you know that, Russia is also a partner on the International Space Station? So it's not that everything has been cut off with them. But India needs to hedge its bets in this world. And we are stepping out to grasp the American hand of friendship through keeping our national interest right in front of our noses. And I think the charisma of Prime Minister Modi and his very evident camaraderie with President Biden is giving this, the optics of this visit, very high visibility and, a feel-good factor.
Derek Grossman, the idea is not just to deepen the relationship between the two countries. The idea is also to deepen the defense relationship between the two countries. The world knows that India has been largely reliant on Russia for most of its weapons. In fact, 65 of India's weapons and weapon systems still come from Russia, something that the United States of America is not very happy with. They want our dependence on Russia vis-a-vis defense equipment and vis-a-vis oil to come down. My point and question to you is this. Russia has been an old friend to India. They have been a trusted friend to India. When there was no one standing with India, the Russians were standing here with us. Is it your sense that the United States of America will expect India to pick, because that will not be a practical geopolitical stand to take? We have strategic options, and one of our strategic options is Russia.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I think that the Biden administration is actually pretty clear-eyed on India's strategic autonomy and non-alignment. I don't think that the Biden administration expects that India is going to become a formal ally of the United States. But at the same time, I mean, there's certainly a push to further the partnership between the U.S. and India, primarily in order to counter China within the context of the U.S.'s Indo-Pacific strategy. And as you mentioned, I mean, Russia has been a long time, going back to the Cold War, right? The Soviet Union has been a long time partner and even ally of India. And overwhelmingly, India's military equipment is Russian or Soviet in design. And so the U.S. has been trying to chip away at that over the last several years. And I think today demonstrates that the U.S. is making some serious progress, albeit, India, again, does not have to be an ally for that to happen.
Would you say that part of the significant progress is the Predator drones that the United States is now willing to sell to India? There have been many roadblocks, we know that. India has been trying to get these Predator drones for a while now. We also know that the US is picky about who they sell their weapons and technology to. They will not sell, for example, the Predator drones have not been sold to anyone who is not either an ally or member of the NATO. So is that, how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a significant accomplishment if you're sitting in Washington right now. But, again, this is a long, long road here, right? Because, I mean, by most estimates, Russian or Soviet military equipment makes up at least 65% of the Indian armed forces. India is still incredibly reliant upon Russia for spare parts and for maintenance and for expertise on using those systems. I mean, it was less than 2 years ago that India purchased the S-400 system, or rather deployed the S-400 system from Russia in India. That's a surface-to-air missile system. So, I mean, the relationship continues. Now, we're in a new context, obviously, since February of 2022. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, now it looks like Russia has to prioritize its own equipment, for prosecuting the war in Ukraine. And we're already seeing India and other countries kind of facing back orders in terms of Russian military sales. So that does, I think, put some pressure on New Delhi to also go forward with the United States on the drones and on other things, jet engines, for example. Because Russia in the future is probably going to be a far less reliable partner when it comes to military assistance.
One of the arguments I think the Americans have been making is, can you really afford to be heavily reliant as far as weapons are concerned on a partner who is also supplying weapons to your closest enemy, which is China? Of course, there is the weapon systems, there is the defense aspect of the relationship, but there's another very important tangle between the two countries. And that is the H-1B visa issue, something that many urban Indians have to deal with. Now, the US is saying they will ease the H-1B rules for skilled Indian workers to facilitate residence and employment of Indians in the US. Now, here's why this is as crucial for America as it is for India. Indians account for 73% of the total H-1B visas issued in 2022. Indians are employed at some of the top companies in the US like Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, Tesla, and have to get an H-1B visa to work at these companies. These visas have a validity of 3 years and can be renewed for another 3 years. When the new norms are formally instated, H-1B visa holders will not have to travel back to India to renew their visas. They will be able to renew their visas within the US. But more than easing the rules, the major task will be to bring the waiting time to get these visas down. As of now, it can take anywhere from 332 days to 680 days to get an H-1B visa based on the city you are residing in. Not just a work visa. Getting visitor visas can take up to 596 days. Jeremy Gray, fact is that if you speak to any Indian family, most of them will tell you they have either one or more relatives who are settled in the United States of America. So I would say there is a family tie with the country as well. If you have so many people, who know so many people who are living in the United States of America, it's a family tie. Many of our friends, family, relatives go to work in the United States of America. Why has visa been such an issue? Why has the United States of America been so stingy when it comes to giving visas to Indians?
Just think in general, when it comes to visas, when it comes to people coming to our border, it's this fight between Democrats and Republicans as far as who we let in our country. And so I just think this is a good step. Like, it's not a perfect step. I think that we're building trust. I think it's a great stepping stone, a positive step in the right direction. And through these bilateral relationships, hopefully things like visa will be less worrisome, but this is the process. And so hopefully this engagement, this mutual engagement helps with some of those things. But when you talk about passports, visas, it's just one of those things that takes a long time in America, especially when you think about the process. Just some of the systems are slow. So it may be just part of our infrastructure, because I hear this with passports, visas, the whole nine.
Okay, so this is just a pilot project. I just want to clarify to our viewers that what we just mentioned is a pilot project. If it works, it is only then it will be expanded. But this was a quick chat. Thank you very much, Jeremy Gray, for joining us from Alabama. Derek Grossman, thank you very much. And Gurjeet Singh, thank you very much for joining us as well and giving us perspective on what has happened in the last 1 hour and what is expected to happen in the next 16 to 18 hours. We'll leave it there for the moment, ladies and gentlemen. Our coverage